Shifters, welcome back to another episode of the Pro Shift Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Shawn Soole. Today, I'm looking forward to this one. I can't remember, last week sometime, I posted something about the podcast, and this lovely lady commented on it on LinkedIn, and I was like, you know what? I need to sit down and talk to this person because she's won ridiculous amount of awards. I don't want to even see her award shelf at her house because it has to be absolutely mental. I'm trying to do some stuff on Facebook right now, as I usually do while I'm trying to do my intro, as well as do this so that we can have people chatting and talking. But I want to introduce Kellyanne Woods. She's the CEO and founder of State B. We connected years ago through Gillespie Fine Spirits with my BC Spirits thing. Like, as you can see behind me, my crazy collection that my brother-in-law was taking photos of yesterday because he couldn't believe how much alcohol I have in my house. But this lady has really pivoted, and we were just talking about it in the green room. State B is a cannabis drinks company, and I still think that it's 2 to 5 years away from like being saturated in the market in the way of like people actually connecting with it. So I'm really looking forward to chatting about that and sort of going and diving deep into cannabis drinks because it's something that I just do not touch on. So good morning, Kelly. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Shawn. I'm stoked. I'm stoked to be here.
It literally was like you literally commented on a LinkedIn thing the other day, and I was like, how have I not have you on the show? Because I had my BC Spirits podcast, and I had this podcast, and I still, for some reason, we never connected and did an episode. And really, this last year, like, it's sometimes hard to revel in COVID's success, I suppose, a little bit, because a lot of people, a lot of friends in the industry were having a hard time. But you had a absolutely banger 2020.
I had a good 2020, and I know what you mean. It's like you can't be like yay because other people are really having a hard time. So yeah, but yay.
Yay. And I have to say, you're a very ridiculously stylish. Like, a lot of people don't go to so much attention to detail when it comes to backdrops. And I have a lot of people go, oh, we're live streaming. Okay, so I'm going to dress up and wear fancy earrings and actually make myself feel like that I actually am going to do a live stream today.
I think I think, I take a lot from like Nicki Minaj and Cardi B, and like I look at like I'm not those women, but at the same time, like they dress for everything. And it's like, you're representing who you are and you're representing your brand. And when you have an opportunity to like speak to the world, you might as well do it from a place where you're like, I feel good. I look good. This is like actually a room divider. But so when I'm not dividing a room with it, it becomes this great, very regal looking backdrop. So thank you, Wayfair.
Yes, definitely. You look like you're sitting in like a 5-star hotel somewhere, in the lobby somewhere of a 5-star hotel.
But I have also done that. So now you get me at my home on the river or on the ocean in Squamish with my regal backdrop.
Well, let's talk about Squamish for a bit, because let's go back to the starting point of all the drinks game, because Gillespie Fine Spirits had been around for a number of years, and I always ask distillers, especially in BC, I've interviewed distillers all over North America now, but like, what was the draw for you to do something in craft spirit movement in BC? Because that literally is one of the hardest industries to be in, and usually is derived from passion. But the business of craft spirits in BC is a tough one.
Yeah. Well, as you probably know, I started as a sommelier, and then I was a mixologist, and, I'm an actress by trade. And I found myself, my last big job was La Mezcaleria, working for Ignacio and Marcelo and that whole team. And around the same time, I met this very charming Scottish man who was like, I don't have time for a girlfriend. I'm opening a distillery. And I was like, well, you need me. He's still charming. He and I have parted ways as far as our business partnership and our marriage, but we're still great co-parents. And we launched and had Gillespie's Fine Spirits. And I mean, what an incredible opportunity, and what an incredible thing to cut my teeth on, and what an incredibly difficult industry, as you have alluded to. I mean, we started our distillery for the price of most people's still. Mm-hmm. And we were so excited, and we knew that the product we had was excellent. But I think what I really learned from all of that And mind you, Gillespie's is now Rain City, and they're about to reopen. It's all very exciting for those Alex and Johnny. But what I really learned from that was to not be undercapitalized. That it is absolutely crucial to make sure that you have enough money to do what you want to do, because there's a reason when you walk into the liquor store and there's Beefeater and craft gin, and why people are buying Beefeater or Tanqueray or, like Aviation, because it's just so much more cost effective because they've got these economies of scale. And so it's really, really tough. And I think that the BC government does not support craft distilleries enough. They do the whole thing where you're working with BC grains and fruits, and then we're not going to charge this extreme, exorbitant, put you out of business tax and markup. But they still don't make it easy to make a living. And these companies, the breweries, the cideries, the distilleries, the small craft non-alcoholic producers, these are the red ones. This is the bones and the guts of our province. This is what attracts the tourism dollars. And frankly, I think it's appalling, the lack of support, and especially the financial support for these companies. So,
do you think they sort of do the usual smoke screen? Like, I feel like the government always does this when it comes to liquor legislation. I remember when they changed the laws about the separation of food and drinks in bars. Like, it's going to be subjective now, depending on the inspector that comes in and sees the place behaving like a bar, so on and so forth. And I always feel like, as a industry, distilleries and everybody, we're sort of like yapping chihuahuas, and we want our little piece of meat. And so they throw us a massive bone, and it may be like, oh, we're gonna open it up to make really easy to become a craft distillery. But then in the background, while they've thrown that big bone to all of us yapping to try and get our piece of meat, they put so many rules in place of you can only do 50,000 liters before you get taxed more. And the scalability of craft distilleries in particular in BC is so ridiculously limited, and I don't think a lot of venture capitalists that have made their way into the craft spirit movement here in BC completely understand the lack of scalability you can actually do.
In hindsight, Shawn, they changed the regulations just as we were about to become licensed. So we looked at it looked great on paper. It was like, oh, if you produce from BC grain or BC fruit, then you're exempt from this huge markup. What we didn't recognize was the cost of that raw commodity and the cost to ship it, because they don't grow grain down the road in Squamish, so they grow grain in the Peace River region. Well, how much does it cost to ship a ton of grain from Peace River? Almost equal to the amount that it costs to buy that ton. So, and these are just the things that you don't consider. They're just not even on you. Our mentorship systems aren't strong enough, and you just don't, oh, shipping's going to be atrocious and it's going to drive up my cost of goods by 100%. You just don't consider these things. So while, I just struggle with a lot of levels of government overall, because I feel like there's this drastic separation between the private sector and the public sector. I feel like there's this, they just don't get it, and they don't get how important it is to return your phone call instead of going on vacation for 2 weeks. It's the separation between what's actually happening for people on the ground and what's happening in the offices of people making decisions. It's just,
it's night and day, and
different planets.
And it's just processing that grain. I don't think a lot of consumers understand, if you're making whiskey, of course, you're going to take that time to process the grain and mash it and all that sort of stuff, because you're making whiskey. That's the nature of the beast. But when you're making a vodka, so you do all the same work into making a whiskey, but then you got to distill it 5 times to make a clean vodka product. And it's I understand the reasoning behind it, but I also don't understand the lack of understanding of that connection, like you were saying, the dichotomy of it all. So when you first started up Gillespie's, I know that you did Squamish for a very good reason. I was reading a couple of articles about you last week or so, and you want to do something in Vancouver, obviously property and rentals and landlords and stuff pre-COVID. I'm curious how that's going to roll out post-COVID. Landlords not being able to get, I'm looking forward to a lot of cheap real estate in Vancouver. But what was it about Squamish that made you do it? Because obviously you're a very passionate person. You're very business savvy. How do you balance out that business and passion and then pick a little town on the way to Whistler?
So interestingly enough, we had a kerfuffle. I'll call it a kerfuffle, even though it was a massive issue where this, the whole thing with going into I forget what it's called now, because I think I've blocked the trauma out of my head. But it was with the development services, and the guy in development services gave us incorrect information, which led us to rent this space that we couldn't actually move forward in. So we lost like $30,000 of our initial budget because of this guy's clerical error. And then we were going to sue him. And then the all the lawyers we talked to was like, if you try to sue the city of Vancouver, they're gonna kill you. They're gonna drown you. They're just gonna drown you in paperwork, and you'll never get your business off the ground. So we were like, what are we gonna do? Like this is a problem. So my friend Andrea Graham, who runs the Base Coast Festival, and Base Coast used to be here in Squamish, she's like, well, have you thought about Squamish? Because we started looking at Abbotsford and Maple Ridge and, all these different places. And she said, have you thought about Squamish? And I said, Squamish, that little town I drive through to go party in the bush, or the one with the McDonald's and the Canadian, that one? She's like, yeah. And Squamish, this was just after the Olympics, but this is before Squamish became the it girl, like the New York Times article and everything else. And Squamish is the it girl and continues to be the it girl. It's just incredible. So, and the doors just flew open. Like the door, it was cost effective. There was a supportive community, and I miss my home in Quebec near Ottawa so much, but I loved the Sunshine Coast, but this is home to me. This is home to me. It's full of hippies, which are like redneck hippies, which is like kind of my deal. Like just people that are full of heart with just a little bit of edge, Lager sports is like my favorite event of all times, So I think in a nutshell, that's why Squamish.
And you continue to live in Squamish. When you're moving on from Gillespie's, what was the catalyst for the next step? Because I know that you had Boozewitch for a very long time. Like, yep. Boozewitch was always like a secondary brand under Gillespie's with the shrubs and that sort of thing. What was the catalyst that sort of made you go, okay, well, let's get into cannabis, like cannabis drinks? Because it is like we talked about off in the green room, is like, I still don't think that if someone's got into it, it's not well thought out the way that you've done yours. It's a cash grab. It's let's do a brand, throw some CBDs into a liquid, done. Let's cash out and sell our companies and flip it. Or a complete misunderstanding, like myself. Like I have a lot of people go, oh, let's talk about cannabis in cocktails. I'm like, it's out of my wheelhouse completely and utterly.
So you don't consume cannabis at all?
I've started doing edibles, to be honest with you. Like, I'm sure you feel the same way. When you're in the hospitality industry, alcohol can be a hindrance and a help. Yeah. And I'm a big guy, 6'5" and 280 pounds. That's a lot of drinks. Like all of a sudden you're just like, oh, I just drank that much. That's probably copious to a lot of societal standards. So I have dabbled in edibles, and I have contemplated doing like an executive edibles thing, because I think that it's funny how we still demonize cannabis, but we then still go, okay, well, go to your doctor and get sleeping pills, and go to your doctor and get anxiety medication, and take 4 pills a day, especially when you're in a hospital, like an entrepreneurship sort of style. And so for me, it's been something that I've been sort of dabbling in, but still don't fully understand.
I have a lot to say about. I have so many things to share.
This is what I got you on the show for.
I have so many things. So the beginning of State B and was at the same time. It was 3 things. It was an amalgamation of all my professional experience as a drink producer and crafter, and like 30 years of being in hospitality and everything else. I think 30. Yeah. Well, I started as a bus girl when I was 12, so that's about right. And then it was a business. Like, it was a business decision. I saw the way things were moving. I saw what was happening. I also saw what I could personally contribute, because I was looking around, I was tasting things. I'm like, these guys don't know what they're doing. they don't know how to make drinks. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing was, it was outside of me. There was something bigger that called me to do it. And I was, John and I weren't together anymore, and we were in the process of selling the distillery. And I was like, well, what's next? Like, what am I going to like? Boozewitch, which is now under the Brahera brand, is great, but that's not gonna like make me a multi-millionaire. Mm-hmm. Like, everybody's kind of like, what's the thing that's gonna buy me the house and give me the lifestyle? Like, what's the thing that's gonna bring me to this next phase? So I went to a wedding. My friends Jonathan and Yira, who used to own Pied de Almas Mezcal, and they sold to Diageo, and they're now making, like, you should interview them. They are just incredible. They're now making artisan corn whiskey out of artisan corn that's grown.
I've seen and heard these guys.
They're next level. They're some of my biggest inspirations, right? And so summer solstice two years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago, 2019 summer solstice, they had invited me as a very distinguished guest. I couldn't believe it, to their wedding. And so I was in Oaxaca, which is a magical place as it is, drinking lots of mezcal, and at rehearsal dinners with like people who've like brought mezcal to North America, Yira Vallejo being one of those people, the people who like brought Mexican cuisine to New York, and like the Gergich family, the wine Gergich family, like all these people. And I'm like, pinch me, like what? I'm like, wow. But I was so inspired, and I was so filled with like excitement from being there. And I got back on the plane to come back, and I was reading Forbes, as you do, you know. I was reading Forbes, and I got to the back of Forbes, and Forbes had just introduced this green entrepreneur section. And there was this picture of this woman, just a fantastic looking woman, and fierce. You know, when you see someone's fierce, you're like, I like you. And it was this gorgeous place with plants and high ceilings. And the article was titled, Why You Should Know Amy Margolis. And I just got shivers. But it was talking about her program, The Initiative. And The Initiative is a program out of Portland, Oregon. And the whole program is about putting women in powerful positions in the cannabis industry. And Amy is quoted in the article as saying, we don't want one seat at the table. We want all the seats at the table. And I was like, I've got to go. I got to do this. This is my next thing. So lo and behold, I get into the program. And I spend about a few days a week, every week, September through January, September 2019 to January 2020, going back and forth. And I mean, like, I would drive down from Squamish, park my car at the train station because I couldn't afford to fly. And then I would like get on the train first thing. And like, I hustled, and I went through this program, and I basically got a mini MBA and everything that I would need in order to launch a cannabis beverage. So I smoked tons of weed. My dad grew weed. I hung out with all the people like who did all the weed. I mean, I was just like, I was in weed. I understood cannabis, you know, but I didn't understand cannabis from the perspective of like growing a brand, you know? So I graduated, and then COVID, you know, the giant plume of COVID happened over everything and everybody. But I turned that into an opportunity for me to like hone in and really focus and develop this product. And so what I developed is I looked at everything that was happening out in the market, and I was like, that's boring. That's just boring. Basically, what you're doing is you're taking like the White Claw model or the like vodka soda model, and you're just basically putting cannabis and soda and flavor. And that's like, oh, this one has 100 grams, or this one, or 100 milligrams. This one has 10 milligrams. And I'm like, we got more than that. We've got better than that. And so my mind, having, you know, worked in psychedelics and experienced psychedelics and worked with ayahuasca and all these different wonderful things, my mind went, let's do something that modulates mood. Let's not focus on, is this going to get me high? Is this going to get me relaxed? Let's focus on what the possibilities here are. So I developed a drink that not only has really consciously measured amounts of CBD and THC, but it also has nootropic and adaptogenic herbs. So in this time, I also became a herbalist because I really wanted to understand all these things and how they work together. So each drink is designed to modulate your mood to help you feel a certain way. So Sparkle, Resolve, and Zing are basically about to launch in California, later on this month in Canada. And then there's Chill and Go that are coming out. One's coming out in the sort of fall, winter, and then Go is coming out 4/20 next year. But each of them have, you know, really strongly considered amounts of cannabinoids, both THC and CBD, except for Zing. Zing's the big one with 10 milligrams of THC. botanical extracts, flower essences, which is a vibrational medicine because they work. You don't have to believe in them for them to work, but they work. And then specific terpenes. So people are all into an indica or a sativa. Well, that's like, it's all about the terpenes. It's like, it's the strains, yes, but more than indica, sativa, hybrid, dominant, all that stuff is really, over the next couple of years, we're going to start to understand that it's really about the terpenes that really affect us. And sweetened with agave. So low calorie, and I think I'm forgetting something important, but I'll come to me. So anyway, just a next level drink. That's like, let's do something really interesting here, you know?
And so during COVID, you did all this. Did you launch in the US first, or did you launch here?
Well, we're launching in the US now and basically we were doing both at the same time. But as you can imagine, launching a drink is one thing. Launching a cannabis drink, launching a cannabis drink during a pandemic, I kind of had to hold both projects, and because I had to see which one was going to bring me revenue first. It was really hard to tell. And unfortunately, women are terribly underfunded. So overall, women got less money than we work. A couple of years ago. So it's so we've always been scrappy, and so I've had to be really smart about which one's going to bring me the money first. And it just so happens that right now it's California, and then Canada later on this month. So
how was the response governmental wise? Because we've talked about the government already a couple of times. How was the response governmental wise, like trying to get it listed? Because there's no alcohol in them. It's just a pure non-alcoholic product, right?
Pure non-alcoholic product, but you're still dealing with, the Ontario Cannabis Board, which is part of the LCBO. You're still dealing with Alberta. You're still dealing with. So in California and in different states, there's there's government components, but there's no government deciding whether your product can go to market or not. You have to satisfy a bunch of other legislative things and compatibility and safety and all that kind of stuff. But in Canada, we call them the gatekeepers. They're the gatekeepers. So they're the people that are running the show insofar as the different markets are concerned. So, it's not easy. It's not easy. And I don't want to speak poorly because that would be a terrible business decision. But it's hard. It's hard, right? You're dealing with people who have a lot going on and are looking at a lot of products, and it's a brand new industry. So some people think they see, we've got a raspberry. Sparkle is a raspberry flavor, and Sparkle is designed to make you feel euphoric, aphrodisiac, receptive. But the feedback was, well, I already have a raspberry drink. It was like, there's so much more here going on than just the flavor of it is concerned. You know what I mean? So we're in that process now.
Well, because I think a lot of time, unfortunately, my brother-in-law works for the BC Liquor Board in the warehouse in Delta, and a lot of people just transferred straight over from liquor to cannabis with no extra training or anything. It's just like straight up, like, I'm going to transfer over to cannabis. It's going to be lucrative. Let's do it.
Yeah, it's like transferring from laundry detergent to chocolate bars. I mean, I can kind of understand how, one of them is like they're all like consumer packaged goods, but it's a very different thing. And so there's a lot of education. There's a lot of explaining, especially when you come with something totally insane like I have. Like, I'm like, no. This is like a completely different idea, right? And, And they're all looking for, so they're like, oh, I want it to land on the shelf at $6. So then we're having these arguments with people going, okay, so if the liquor stores had maintained, I only want wines at $10, where would we be? You got to start to think, if this isn't, and I think it's important to recognize it isn't just a delivery method. There's so much more. There's so much more to these drinks, and it's possible in this drink realm. We're about to announce. Well, we've announced, but there's a big press release coming out about our emulsion supplier. We work with this incredible emulsion producer called Next Leaf, and Next Leaf has this unbelievable emulsion that we work with in Canada, and we work with Vertosa in California, which is amazing. And just the way these emulsions move into your body and how you're able to absorb them, they're bioavailable within 5 to 15 minutes. Now that is not the same claim that other drinks can make, because it's MCT oil and it's different things, but this stuff goes into your body like an alcoholic drink. It's not like I'm going to eat a brownie and wait 2 hours and then get too wasted because I ate too much. And, or it's not like smoking it, where the delivery system of smoking it has all these other negative carcinogenic side effects, So you can literally reach over, and I should have had some cans, but you can reach over, crack a can, pour a can, and sip it like you're sipping in the backyard with friends and be able to feel that experience. Just like you would a glass of wine or a cocktail or a beer or something,
I find that that's been the biggest thing for edibles for me, is that like I have to time it out and plan it so perfectly. And then if I do it too late, then the next morning I'm groggy. And like, that's been my biggest issue with the edible movement. Again, I'm a big guy, so it takes a little bit longer to get through my system. And so I've had that's where the issues with the edibles have come for me. So I'm always curious about this, because it took me a really long time personally to call myself a hospitality entrepreneur. I was always just a business guy who did hospitality stuff. As a hospitality entrepreneur, do you find that this industry and being an entrepreneur within the industry is much tougher than a lot of other industries? For me, it's always that long tail ROI, like you were saying, like where's the revenue going to come? When am I going to get the revenue? So on and so forth. But I find it's always much longer tail. How do you balance it out yourself personally?
I think that it's a difficult transition from I go in, I work my shift, I get paid my tips, I get this hourly wage, but it's not that there's no future in sight, because there's a management position, there's owning something or so on and so forth. But for a long time, especially as an actress bartender, an actress sommelier, an actress waitress, it was very difficult for me to see that light at the end of the tunnel. It was very difficult for me to see, like, either I'm going to get a big break as an actor, or I'm going to keep serving tables. And there's nothing, let me put a caveat in there. There's nothing wrong with serving tables, and there's nothing wrong with bartending, and there's nothing wrong with the industry as a whole. But for me, I always wanted to have a kid, like being a bartender and being a mom is tough. Those are like being pregnant and being a bartender. I did that, that is a grind, let me tell you. Then I think really if it's about just staying in the industry and either owning or management, or keep doing those floor shifts or bartending shifts, that's a world. And if that is your world, I am full support. We need people to do that world. But if you have these sites for yourself where you're an entrepreneur, that differentiation between working in the industry and being an industry leader is a completely different thing. And you have to start to consider, how am I going to generate revenue? What is the revenue model? And then you have to start thinking, you have to start using literally a very different part of your brain. A very different part of your brain, that and reading very different things, and having different mentors and talking to different people, because that's a switch. That's a big switch. And often it comes up with either some kind of ownership, you own something, or some kind of intellectual property, or some kind of a product. You have to have something, or like a subscription. You have to have something that people want to buy. Other than that, it's really difficult to make a living.
Do you think that I always laugh when people say, well, look at Gordon Ramsay. He's a millionaire. And I'm like, yeah, but he's a millionaire that has like 40 restaurants, and he's done like a dozen books, and he has like 4 TV shows. That's the only way he can be a millionaire in the hospitality sphere, is by spreading this massive love. And so when it comes to that switch, how did you make that switch between that passion and business? How did you go, I know you said earlier on, like, I was a mixologist, I was a sommelier, then I got into distilling and that thing. And it is very similar when it comes to like making a drink and putting flavors together to go into a spirit. But that business acumen is something that I find is tough. And even me personally, when I was 33 years old, when I did Little Jumbo, I did not have that business acumen that I have now.
Yeah.
And so it took me a long time, and I think a couple of friends who are close mentors sort of helped me with that. Like, you can be passionate as hell, but if you can't keep the lights on, there's no point for your passion. Yeah. How did you make that switch, and how did you dial that in? Because obviously you've progressed aggressively in a relatively short period of time, like 5 years, to really know exactly and focus in and like dial in exactly what you want for the next 5 years.
Yeah. I think a lot of that has to do with changing the information that comes into you. You have to really alter what you're paying attention to. There's so many great quotes about like what you perceive you achieve, and all of those things is like, you really have to change what you're being programmed to do. And I think you really said it well in that you have to start calling yourself something different. So when you call yourself a CEO, you behave in a different way. And you call yourself a founder, you behave in a different way, as opposed to an owner, an operator, a partner, a manager. Like you can, when you give yourself a title, that changes it changes the way you think of what you do and how you do it. I think that's a big, I think, and it's about claiming it and owning it too, right? You're like, I am this, I better behave like that. I better talk like that. I better change the way I behave in the world to reflect what I'm calling myself. And I think it's about absorbing different information. So like podcasts and books and, courses and all those things, and having a really strong vision, like maintaining and holding a really strong vision. I think executing a business plan is, no one really looks at them anymore, it's the thing. But executing a business plan is a great idea, a way to get things going in your head. Looking at yourself in 5 years, going, where do I want to be in 5 years? Well, what is that in 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, and then breaking that up into quarters, and then you start to project that way as well. But I think it's really just about it's a shift. There's a shift, and I think as hospitality entrepreneurs and as people in drink and food, we have especially I get calls all the time from people who want to ask me questions. I take those calls. Because, and they're not long calls, because I'm like, I got 5 minutes. So what do you need? But I take those calls and I answer those emails, because I believe that is crucial to growing I'm going to get a little weepy about this, because like, there have been people that have done that for me, and there have been people that have blown me off. And I think that as far as a culture of excellence and a culture of success, we have to answer those phone calls and answer those emails with boundaries. Like, I got 5 minutes, but really reaching out and helping other people and supporting other people to rise, and giving other people. I think a lot of it was being trained in the US as well. The US has a certain level of audacity that I think we lack as Canadians, and I think Americans just like, I'm going to take it. This is I'm going to own this. And I'm going to, I find modeling after male entrepreneurs as well, because women are a little bit more apologetic. I look at the dudes, I'm like, what are those guys doing over there? I'm going to do that, like, I'm going to do it in a feminine way, but I'm going to model all these successful people. What are they doing? And really, Shawn, I think it's just, it's a choice. You just make a choice. You just go, am I a bartender, or am I a founder of a line of da-da-da, and we're doing this? Like, you just tell a different story.
So what is the plan for the next 2 to 5 years? We just mentioned it. Like, what's the plan for what do you want to achieve personally and professionally over the next 2 to 5 years?
Well, really, ideally, so State B goes to market. We are working, people are already looking at exit strategies and mergers and acquisitions, and because that's really what the game is. And Brujeria we've developed as an umbrella. So under the Brujeria umbrella, we have State B, which is the cannabis beverage line. We have Elevate, which is a non-cannabis version of that drink. We have Brujeria, the Brujeria line of cocktail mixers and elixirs, which used to be Booze Witch, but now is under the Brujeria line. And then we have Shroom Boom, which is an adaptogenic mushroom line served in the 5-hour energy drink size, stainless steel or aluminum, not plastic, because that sucks. But that's poised for the medicinal market. So should Health Canada has a special access permit right now where they're actually allowing different healthcare providers that if nothing's working, yes, psilocybin and other psychedelics can be used for treatment. Well, when that kind of thing happens, you start to pay attention. You start to pay attention to what's happening within the psychedelic community. So this adaptogenic mushroom drink is poised to include psilocybin should it become a consumer packaged good within the medical industry. I don't think you're going to be able to go into a dispensary and buy psilocybin. I think I doubt that, but I think it's highly possible. I think it's highly possible. And I'm a full supporter of the microdosing of psilocybin. I think it's incredible. And I think it's I think cannabis is world changing, but I think psilocybin and others are definitely world changing as well.
Well, there has been some movement. I think, didn't Denver just legalize mushrooms and psychedelics just recently?
There's a ton going on. And when people like Bruce Linton and Kevin O'Leary started an organization, I think it's called Mind Med, and Kelsey Ramsey with Mind Cure. I mean, there's a ton of money being dumped into psychedelics right now. So working in mood modulation, you're paying attention, because like, I think for me, it will always be drinks until it's not. It will always be drinks, because that's the world I know. That's the paradigm I know. That's the world that I can communicate with people through. When it's not drinks anymore, it will be an investment fund for women. That's what my personal goal is, to get in, crush it, sell state B, maybe keep the others, but sell state B for sure, for as much money as we possibly can get, and then start an investment fund for women. And that it's not specific to any industry, but it's like it's the model of an accelerator, and you come in and you participate, and we train you and we mentor you. Then we take a small cut of your company, and we just tell you to go get it and crush it, and give you ongoing mentorship, and we invest in you.
Wow, and that's awesome.
Right, because that has been single-handedly one of the biggest challenges, is figuring out how to raise money. Oh, what a trip.
Yeah, I have contemplated doing the same sort of thing for small distilleries in BC, sort of back small craft producers, wine, beer, everything, because I think, as you said in the very beginning, is like undercapitalization. Is you start looking at business plans and you start looking at stills, and you're like, okay, the still's going to cost me this much, and then, oh, wait a second, it got stuck in customs for 2 weeks, and I had to pay these custom fees, and all of a sudden my still is 150% more than what I had in my business plan, and branding and logo design, and all these sort of different crazy things. Speaking about like game, because I think it's brilliantly smart, because a lot of people who get into the industry never think of a exit strategy, never think that you're going to get bought out, or think, how long do you think it is before the PepsiCos and the Coca-Colas are dipping their toes into this movement?
Oh, everybody's paying attention right now. It's all happening. It's until federal legalization in the United States. No one wants to take the risk. Like, people's Instagram accounts are getting shut down. There's all kinds of, I had the pleasure of just being on, Dragon's Den, and what a difference in the climate of Canadian entrepreneurship in cannabis and American entrepreneurship in cannabis, because it's not federally legal. I think as soon as you see federal legalization in the US, I think it's a giant explosion. And I think this is just the tip of the iceberg for cannabis beverages. It's as you said, it's just getting going. But once people start to drink these drinks that are, bioavailable and taste good and make you feel great and don't have all the, I love alcohol, but I also recognize some of the challenges and some of the downfalls and some of the calories and some of the hangovers and some of the health, negative health stuff that cannabis beverages do not deliver.
That's fair. So before I let you go, so I don't want to take too much time, what's the one piece of advice for any entrepreneur trying to get into the hospitality space to really like chew on after this interview goes? Because you've dropped some nuggets in this whole interview. Like, it's been epic. Like, I could literally talk to you. Like, it's been fantastic.
Aw, thanks. I think it's important to oh gosh, I'm going to say something really smart, and I'm just racking my brain there. I would say be really clear about what you're trying to do, and reach out to people that are doing what you're doing and ask for 5 minutes of their time. Like, everyone's got 5 minutes, but ask for 5 minutes of people's time. I would say have a really clear plan about how much money you need, where that money is going to come from, and how the people who gave you money are going to get their money back. I think that that's a really crucial idea. And then start to just absorb as much information as you possibly can. Create like there's all these things about how your wealth is equal to the people you spend time with, and your intelligence is equal to that. If you don't hang out with people that are smarter than you and richer than you, go find them online, because that stuff bleeds onto you. And I think take really good care of yourself. I think that, a strong meditation practice, a journal practice, exercise, hydration, nutrition. I think unless you are in a really good place, you can't go out and crush it every day because you feel like garbage, like you've got to get yourself to feel like a well-oiled machine in order to survive. And don't be a jerk, figure out a way. Like State B gives 1% of its profits every year to an Indigenous legal defense fund called Brave and Trust. And that was before, that's always been really important to me. And it was before everything that's happened in the last couple of months have come to light. But, figure out a way that you're going to be a good person and contribute to the rest of the world, and then pay that forward. This is a community and we can all rise together,
And that was a massive mic drop, and I loved it.
Shawn Soole, I got to say, before you say goodbye, you are a king in my books. Like you are relentless. You don't stop. You support the world. Like, I just think that you are someone that people really have to value, because you just do incredible work. And I think the industry is different because you're in it.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Well, thanks so much for your time, Kellyanne. It was awesome. Like it's well and beyond what I expected for this episode. Like, just epic. Good luck with this year. Good luck with the launch in the US and in Canada. And I think we need to touch base in about a year's time and see where you're at.
Great. Watch me on Dragon's Den in the fall.
I will. Okay. Thanks again.
Okay. We'll